Hi, and welcome to another episode of Ask Mike. Today we're going to talk about education spending, school spending here in East Hampton. My guests are Superintendent of Schools Nancy Follansbee and the school's business consultant Andy Paquette. So today my guests are the Superintendent of Schools, Nancy Follansbee, and the East Hampton School Department's business consultant, Andy Paquette. Andy, Nancy, nice to see you both today.
Nice to see you, Mike.
Thank you.
So as you know, today's show is about the education funding, the school budget per se in East Hampton, and I've heard and I've said that the school budget is about 2/3 of what we spend here in East Hampton. So this would be a good opportunity, I think, to try to explain what that means to the citizens here in East Hampton.
Okay, so I've asked Andy if he would give a broad overview of the budget, our spending and our funding sources, and we have some charts and graphs to see if we can help make this easy for everyone to understand.
Charts and graphs are good.
Yeah, Andy?
Thank you. The funding for education in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and here in East Hampton is made up of two primary sources, state aid and an amount that the city is required to contribute. If you were to look at the trends over time, you would see that the funding from the state has been pretty level, with the burden of increases having to be borne by the city. So the Commonwealth has a minimum budget that is expected of communities to fund education, and then they actually have one for the local community, and then the city of East Hampton funding the district above minimum required. There is the gap between the state aid and what is expected to be borne by the city. One of the things that is key to recognize is that of those funds that the city contributes towards education, over 1.2 million is for students that leave the district through the choice or charter programs that the Commonwealth allows.
So these students that leave the district, they're still East Hampton residents?
That's correct. They're East Hampton residents that choose to, for various reasons, to go elsewhere and to receive an education. Whether their reasons are numerous. So.
And it is a state program, so there are a number of districts that participate in choice, and we are one of them. And so if our students choose to go to other districts, then we have to send them.
And that's school choice and also charter schools.
And
so
charter
part of the
schools.
same program.
That's right. That's right.
Correct. So those are funds that, even though we receive credit for educating students, it is not for direct services to students that remain in East Hampton. So there's 1.2 million plus that leaves the district.
And Andy, do you want to just kind of go through the color bars on that chart?
Sure. The red bars represent the state aid for the city of East Hampton from 93 to 2012. Then we have the striped bars, if you will, are what is called the foundation budget. That, for lack of a better phrase, is the floor. That's the lowest the possible amount of funds that can be spent on education deemed by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Then they do a various pretty complex calculation where they come up with an actual required net school spending for each community, and that's what the black dotted line represents for what is expected of the city of East Hampton to fund education. And then the top part of the chart, the graph with the diamonds, that represents the actual amount that the city of East Hampton funds education toward. And you'll see that clearly the state has not, it's been pretty level, and with the costs going up, the expectation being that in order to meet the actual net school spending and the required, it is borne by the city.
You can see that the state contribution, the Chapter 70 money, isn't keeping up with the city contribution as we go along through the chart.
Okay. Next we have, because there are other funding sources that go towards educating the students here in East Hampton, and this pie chart represents for fiscal year 2013 those funding sources as we know right now. You'll see the major portion of it, 87% of $15 million, comes from the city. That is combined city contribution and the state aid. Then we also have revolving accounts. Those are funds that the district has that are recurring. They generate revenue, and then we offset expenses to those. The two primary ones are some tuition programs we have here in district and a transportation revolving account for students that fall beyond the statutorily required amount for providing transportation and mileage. We're able to charge them, and we do charge them. So expenses are charged off to those revolving accounts. We anticipate receiving $885,000, just under $886,000 in federal and state grants. We use, again, those for appropriate expenditures per the grants, primarily for personnel and contracted services, and that's where a lot of the professional development in the district is paid from. There's a program that the state has which is called Circuit Breaker, and Circuit Breaker is a program for high-cost special education students that any cost that is over a dollar amount set by the state, it's four times the foundation per pupil cost, they will reimburse you. The goal has always been 100% reimbursement of that, above that cost. It's been bouncing around anywhere between the mid-60s to high 60s to potentially even low 70s during the good times.
So that's state aid over and above what's included in the blue on the pie chart.
That is correct. And then we have another big slice of the pie. The biggest, other than the local contribution, is the school choice. We are anticipating spending $922,000 of school choice funds. Those are funds that we receive for students coming into the district. The big thing to remember about those funds is those are one-time funding. So we are anticipating using pretty much all of the reserves that the district has accumulated and leaving us with only what we're collecting in FY13 as we go forward into subsequent fiscal years.
So how much of that school choice income do we usually earn in a year?
It's been anywhere between $370,000 to sometimes as high as $390,000. We're looking at about $372,000 now.
So this is nearly 3 times the amount that we expect to reoccur.
That's correct.
And I think it might be good here to clarify that for every student who choices into our district, we receive approximately $5,000. For every student who choices out of our district, we lose $5,000. For every charter student who leaves our district, we lose approximately $10,000. This year we had approximately 69 students choice into our district and around 190 choice out of our district. And about 50 students chose to go to charter schools.
So there's about 240 students who are residents of East Hampton who go to school at schools that aren't East Hampton schools.
Exactly.
Big number.
Taking quite a bit of money with them.
Yeah.
And then next up, we just sort of have a trend from 2007 forward to see the trends in our uses of the funds that we have available to us. And you'll see some of the peaks and valleys. A lot of that has to do with, if you're familiar with the fact that the federal government issued some federal aid when the economy really hit rock bottom. They tried to come in with some federal stimulus funds, is a common term used. So we are able to use those grant funds to help us try and ride out this economic downturn, which clearly is not the case as we are now. So you'll see some of the trends, a peak here for the grants, which result in a correlating decline in our use of the school choice. So that way there, the goal was to help us ride through and to not necessarily to decimate the education here in East Hampton, which we're able to do with the understanding that we still had to make some significant cuts.
So that bump in the center set of numbers there, that bump we see in blue is that stimulus money that the government provided to help get through the toughest year. I guess it was, what, fiscal 11?
That's correct.
Right. And you can see how it's dropping since then.
Quickly.
Yes.
Drastically.
This chart represents how we use the dollars that we have available to us directly inside the school district. So it's commonly called the Schedule 1. This is what we have control over. And the way that we if the biggest chunk, rightfully so, is spent on instructional services in the district. The other areas here. This is administration, this is other school services. Administration is the business office, technology, the superintendent's office, so everything that is...
Kind of the overhead.
That's correct, that's correct. Other school services is primarily transportation and the nursing and health services here in district, along with athletics and student activities. Operations and maintenance is pretty straightforward. It is the maintenance, the safety, security, health, as far as the custodial operations within the district. This section of fixed charges here is very small. It represents leases and rental of equipment that we have in a district, primarily copy machines. And then the last piece here is tuitions. Those are tuitions for vocational, collaborative, and special education tuitions that we have to send students out for not being able to provide services within our programs that we have here within East Hampton. These other four, other than instructions, the way that, quite honestly, is that these are for almost quasi-fixed costs. We can't really control these. You can control, but quite honestly, over the past history, we have done things in the operation maintenance with the work of the city regarding energy efficient upgrades. We have really gone to as bare bones minimum as we could in these areas. So the only area when a time comes for the increased costs and the less funds available that we have to cut is in the instruction line, which the superintendent will speak to, if not now, later, as far as what it is that we're...
Well, and I think you can see, just like in our own homes, that the cost of everything is going up. So you can see the cost going up for operation and maintenance and for other school services. And as Andy said, we've put in a lot of measures to try to control those to the greatest degree possible. But clearly we aren't able to control them any more than we are in our own homes and our own lives. The other thing that you see in the instruction section is there's a bump up again in fiscal 11, and that's because we had the stimulus money and we were able to put back teaching positions and add some teaching positions that we weren't able to do before. And again, you can see when the money disappeared, those positions also have disappeared, because that's where we can make our cuts when we don't have the funding.
Well, and it looks like the current year, which is represented in the far right, is about as high as the oldest year you show, which is the far left bar in those colored columns. And so in 5 years, we really haven't made much progress in now, you say instruction, I think teachers, is that correct?
Yes, right.
So we've not been able to keep up with inflation on teacher salaries.
Absolutely.
And so as they've earned raises and changes in pay because they've gotten more education and they've been with us longer, we've had to absorb some of that now because we don't have as much money as we needed to keep as many teachers employed.
That's right. And we do want to remain competitive in East Hampton with neighboring school districts. We want to attract the very best teachers. I think we have very highly qualified teachers, and in order to do that, we need to remain competitive with salaries in other districts. So, that's another factor that enters into the budget-making process.
And then we have this. Now what we did in this chart here is we included the expenses that the city pays on behalf of education here in East Hampton. So
yeah, it looks like some of the columns on the right have gone up a little.
That's correct. That's correct. The fixed charges, this represents the two key components here are health insurance and retiree insurance that are now part of the net school spending part that is borne by the city, as well as liability, the other sort of insurance areas that are workers' comp and things of that nature that are education-related expenses, but they're on the city side of the ledger. So it is also part of that actual net school spending. Those are borne here. But again, when you look at those trends, it does still sort of keep the one area of control being the instructional service within the district.
Yeah, even when you include all the costs, including those that are paid for by the city, it's still very obvious that teachers and personnel who instruct students in the schools is the big expense that the school department faces.
Right. And that would include paraprofessionals as well, which are an important
All
part
direct
of
service to students.
Right.
Exactly. And then the far right tuition, that did increase because we included the choice and charter tuition out that the city pays, but also again meets the requirement for spending on
It's a-
education here in this.
part of education spending, but that's taken right by the state right away off the cherry sheet,
That's
the
correct.
so-called payments that they make to the city.
That's correct.
So what happens when we have level funding even, and as you know, costs go up every year. The only place that we can make our cuts to make the budget balance is in that instructional side of our budget. So I've created sort of a history of the kinds of cuts and reductions that we've had to make in our budget over the years in order to balance. And you can see that the positions eliminated from 2009 to 2013, 15 teaching positions, 1 administrative, 1 guidance, 2 paraprofessionals, another guidance, a different type of guidance. I put 2 categories there. 2 custodians, 1 secretary. So there are a total of 23 positions that have been eliminated in the school budget over those years since 2009. Now, we also, in addition to that, have had to reduce the number of positions as we've tried to balance the budget. And all the time, we're trying to protect our programs, our services, and our small class sizes to the greatest degree possible, and keep our cuts as far away from the instructional core as we possibly can do. So for reductions, you can see that we've reduced 3 teaching positions, so that may mean that we had a full-time position and we've reduced it to a half-time position. 1 administrative position, actually we reduced an assistant principal's position from full-time to part-time this year. A school psychologist was reduced from full-time to part-time. 2 paraprofessional positions were reduced from full-time to part-time, and 5 secretaries over this span of years have been reduced from full-time to part-time. So we have a total of 12 reductions in addition to the 23 positions that are eliminated. And Andy, if you want to look at the next slide. Oop. Guess we didn't have that other one in there.
Correct.
So what it means is that we have really had to, cut back on what we're able to offer. We try to, as I say, limit that to areas that aren't going to impact negatively on our students and their education. However, what does happen too is that we know our community wants certain things. They want small class sizes. They want programs and services for our students. They want world languages in our schools. And we want to remain, again, competitive with our surrounding districts. So, because if we're not, then our community parents can choose to send their students to schools where they may be offering smaller class sizes or programs and services that we're not able to offer due to our reductions. So, that's why it's important for us to try to maintain as much as possible what we're currently offering. We think we have provide an excellent education for our students here in East Hampton, but as you mentioned earlier, we don't want to just stay stable, we want to grow. We want to grow our programs, we want to grow our services, we want to make sure that we have up-to-date technology, that we have small class sizes, that we have all the opportunities that our parents want for their children.
Provide 21st century education for 21st century kids.
Absolutely. So that they're career and college and workforce ready in the 21st century. That's our goal. That's our vision.
So you had a slide that said looks like 35 positions were either eliminated or reduced over the last 5 years. And you managed to do that without having a large impact on class sizes. Can you give us some idea of what kind of teaching positions have been changed?
We've reduced positions at the high school where we felt that we could do that without impacting negatively on class size and course load. Now, clearly, we're not able to offer the selection of courses that we were when we had more teaching staff. But we really feel
so would that be some of the electives that the students
Yes.
could choose have not been offered in subsequent years?
Absolutely, absolutely. As you know, a year ago we had to reduce the metal shop position to a 0.5, which impacted that program. But we do feel that it's critically important to keep class size small at the elementary school. The research shows that it's most important to keep class size small there. We also have a problem in our district if we eliminate a teacher or two from a certain grade level. That means that we have to shift students from one school to another because all of our schools right now are K-4 schools. So this year, because we had nowhere else to go, we had to reduce 2 elementary classroom positions. And so some parents and students are being inconvenienced by having to be moved from a school where they've been attending to another school. We prefer not to do that, but we still are maintaining our class sizes to the greatest degree possible by doing that. But you know, we couldn't do both. We couldn't keep students in the same schools and maintain our class size.
But you've given a priority to class sizes in elementary because you feel that that's the best deal for the students.
Right, and that's what the research shows, is that it's critically important, particularly in kindergarten, first and second grade, to keep class sizes small.
It's a complicated field that you work in.
It
and,
is.
And as the superintendent, I really congratulate you for being able to navigate some of this very difficult budget times.
Yeah. Well, I have a very, very good leadership team to work with me, to collaborate with me on making these hard choices. And I also have to say that we have tremendous teaching staff, paraprofessional staff, secretaries, custodians, who really step up to the plate in spite of the cuts that we've had to make. And everyone's taking on more responsibilities. Their jobs are becoming more difficult, more challenging. But everyone steps up to the plate and does such a great job for our students here in East Hampton. It's just that all of us would like to be able to provide more and provide that vision that we have for the East Hampton Public Schools. We have great schools. We want to make them even greater.
Of course. Well, thank you both very much for your time today, and I do hope that you've gotten a bit more out of our conversation today with the superintendent and the business manager in the school system.
And Mike, we thank you for this opportunity. And please, if anyone has any questions about what we said today, get in touch with me. My email address is on the district website, as is Mr. Paquette's, and we would be happy to answer any of your questions and welcome that opportunity.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, thank you for joining us today here on Ask Mike. I hope you enjoyed the program. I want to let you know that we're always looking for ideas. We're always looking for questions. So if you have any questions you'd like us to try to answer, ask Mike. You can do that by email to the station at askmike@ecatchannel5.org or directly to me at work at miket@easthampton.org. We really do want your questions, and we really, really hope you ask Mike.